Have you ever looked in the mirror and quietly wondered, is this it? Is my story already written? What if I told you that some of the most meaningful chapters of your life haven't even begun yet, even after 50? What if the life you've been waiting for is still ahead of you, not behind you? And what if the person you are meant to become is still waiting for you to rediscover him? Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Daniel. He was 58 years old, a quiet man, a simple man, the kind of man who spent most of his life doing what was expected, not what he truly wanted. For over 30 years, Daniel worked the same job. He woke up at the same time every morning, drank the same coffee, took the same road, spoke to the same people, day after day, year after year. From the outside, his life looked stable, respectable, safe, but inside, something was missing. Daniel didn't talk about it much, not even to his family. But sometimes, late at night, when the house was silent and the lights were off, he would sit by the window and think. He would think about the dreams he once had. When he was younger, he wanted to travel. He wanted to write. He wanted to start something of his own. He wanted to feel alive. But life happened. Responsibilities came first. Bills needed to be paid. Children needed to be raised. Time moved quickly, faster than he expected. And before he knew it, decades had passed. Now, at 58, his children had grown up. They had their own lives. His job no longer excited him. His days felt longer, and his purpose felt smaller. One evening, Daniel sat alone at his kitchen table, a cup of tea slowly growing cold in his hands. He stared at nothing, but his mind was loud. "Did I waste my life?" he whispered to himself. That question hit him harder than anything else, not because he didn't work hard, but because he wasn't sure if he lived fully. And that feeling, that quiet regret, started to grow inside him. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Daniel began to withdraw. He spoke less, laughed less. Even the things he once enjoyed no longer brought him peace. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was emptiness. Have you ever felt that? Like something is missing, but you don't know what it is? Like you've done everything right, but it still doesn't feel right. That was Daniel's reality. Until one day, something small happened. Something simple, but powerful. It was a Sunday morning. Daniel decided to take a walk. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't want to sit alone with his thoughts anymore. The park was quiet. Birds were singing. The air was fresh. And as he walked slowly along the path, he noticed an old man sitting on a bench. The man looked older than Daniel, maybe in his 70s. But there was something different about him. He was smiling. Not a loud smile, not a forced smile, but a calm, peaceful smile. Daniel didn't know why, but he felt drawn to him. So he sat down. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke, just silence. Then the old man turned slightly and said, "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, it is." The old man looked at him carefully, not in a strange way, but in a way that felt understanding. "You look like a man carrying something heavy," he said gently. Daniel was surprised. He hadn't told anyone how he felt, not even himself, fully, but somehow, this stranger saw it. Daniel hesitated, then sighed. "I feel like I'm too late," he admitted quietly. "Too late for what?" the old man asked. Daniel looked down at his hands. "For everything," he said. "Dreams, change, meaning. I feel like my life is already finished, and I missed something important." The old man didn't interrupt. He just listened. And then he smiled again. "Let me ask you something," he said. "If you plant a tree at 60, will it not grow?" Daniel frowned slightly. "It will, but it takes time." The old man nodded. "Yes, it takes time. But does that mean you shouldn't plant it?" Daniel didn't answer, because deep down, he knew the truth. The old man continued, his voice calm and steady. "Most people think life is about how early you start. But it's not. It's about whether you start at all." Those words stayed with Daniel. Something shifted. Just a little. Not a big change. Not a sudden transformation, but a small crack in the wall he had built around himself. For the first time in a long time, he considered a different possibility. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. But doubt was still there. What if I fail? Daniel asked softly. The old man chuckled gently. You've already survived 58 years of life, he said. You've faced problems, losses, responsibilities, and you're still here. Why are you suddenly afraid of failing now? Daniel didn't have an answer, because the fear wasn't logical. It was emotional. It was the fear of starting again, of stepping into the unknown, of admitting that he still wanted more. And that scared him. The old man stood up slowly. Listen, he said. The biggest mistake people make after 50 is believing their life is behind them. He paused. But the truth is, this is the only time in your life when you finally understand what matters. Daniel looked up. Use that, the old man said. Don't waste it. And just like that, he walked away. Daniel sat there, silent. But something inside him was no longer the same. For days after that conversation, Daniel couldn't stop thinking. Not about regret, but about possibility. It was a strange feeling, unfamiliar, but exciting. He started noticing small things again. The sunlight in the morning, the sound of laughter, the feeling of fresh air, things he had ignored for years. And then one evening, he did something he hadn't done in decades. He picked up a notebook. At first, his hands felt awkward, like he didn't belong there anymore. But slowly, he started writing. Not perfectly, not professionally, just honestly. His thoughts, his memories, his feelings. And as he wrote, something incredible happened. He felt alive, not because he was successful, not because anyone was watching, but because he was finally expressing something real. For the first time in years, Daniel wasn't just existing. He was living, and that was the beginning. A small step, a quiet moment, a simple decision, but it was enough to change everything. Because sometimes, rediscovering yourself doesn't start with a big action. It starts with a small choice, a choice to try again, a choice to believe that your story isn't over yet. And Daniel, for the first time in a long time, was ready to turn the page. If this story is touching something inside you, if you've ever felt like it's too late, or that you've missed your chance, then stay with me, because this is just the beginning. And if you believe that life can still change, no matter your age, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel, because your next chapter might be closer than you think. Daniel didn't become a different man overnight. There was no sudden success, no big breakthrough the next day, no applause, no recognition, just quiet mornings and small, uncertain steps. At first, he kept his new habit to himself. Every evening, after dinner, he would sit at the same table, open his notebook, and write. Some days the words came easily. Memories flowed like a river. Stories from his childhood, moments with his children, thoughts he had buried for years. But other days, it was hard, very hard. He would sit there, staring at the blank page, feeling that familiar voice inside his head. What are you doing? It would say. This is pointless. You're too old for this. No one will care. And sometimes he believed it. Sometimes he closed the notebook, turned off the light, and went to bed, feeling foolish. That's the part no one talks about. The part where doubt doesn't disappear, even after you decide to change. The part where starting feels exciting, but continuing feels uncomfortable. Daniel was fighting a battle no one could see. Not against the world, but against himself. Weeks passed. The notebook slowly filled with pages. Not perfect pages, not impressive pages, but real pages. And something subtle began to happen. Daniel started to look forward to those moments, not because he was confident, but because it gave him peace. For 1 hour a day, he wasn't thinking about the past or worrying about the future. He was present, and that alone was powerful. One afternoon, his daughter Emily came to visit. She hadn't seen him in a few weeks. Life had been busy. Work, responsibilities, the usual. As she walked into the house, she noticed something different. The air felt lighter. Daniel greeted her with a small smile. Not forced, not tired, but genuine. They sat together talking about simple things, family, daily life, nothing unusual. But Emily kept watching him. "Dad," she said gently, "you seem different." Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure how to explain it. "It's nothing," he said quietly. "Just trying something new." Emily smiled. "That's a good thing." There was a pause. Then she noticed the notebook on the table. "What's that?" she asked. Daniel looked at it, then back at her. "It's just something I've been writing," he said. "Can I see?" That question made him uncomfortable, very uncomfortable. For a moment, all his fears came rushing back. What if it's not good? What if she doesn't understand? What if this is meaningless? He almost said no, but then he remembered the old man in the park. It's about whether you start at all. Daniel took a deep breath and nodded. Emily opened the notebook. She read silently, page after page. Daniel sat there, his hands slightly tense, watching her face, trying to read her reaction. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, she looked up. Her eyes were soft. "Dad," she said quietly, "this is beautiful." Daniel blinked. He wasn't expecting that. "Really?" he asked, unsure. "Yes," she said. "It feels real, honest, like I'm hearing your voice." Daniel didn't know what to say. For years, he had believed his thoughts didn't matter, that his voice wasn't important. And now, someone was telling him the opposite. Emily continued, "You should keep going. Maybe even share it one day." Share it? That idea felt impossible. No, Daniel said quickly. "This is just for me." Emily didn't push. She just smiled. "That's okay, but don't stop." After she left, Daniel sat alone again. But this time, the silence felt different. Not empty, full. He looked at the notebook. For the first time, he didn't see doubt. He saw possibility. That night, he wrote more than ever before. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And something inside him started to grow. Not confidence yet, but belief. A small, fragile belief that maybe he still had something to offer. Days turned into weeks again. Daniel's routine became stronger. Morning walks, quiet afternoons, evening writing. Simple, peaceful. But life doesn't change without testing you. One evening, Daniel received a call. It was from an old colleague. The company he had worked for, the place he had given decades of his life, was downsizing. They didn't need him anymore. The words were polite, professional, but the message was clear. It's time to move on. For a moment, everything inside Daniel froze. This was his identity, his routine, his stability, his comfort zone. Gone. Just like that, fear returned, stronger than before. What now? He thought. At 58, starting over didn't feel inspiring. It felt terrifying. That night, he didn't write. He sat in the dark, just like he used to. The old thoughts came back. "See?" the voice whispered. "You're too late. You should have stayed safe. You're not ready for this." Daniel felt the weight again. Heavy, familiar. But something had changed. He wasn't the same man who sat at that table weeks ago. He had tasted something new. He had felt purpose, even if it was small. And deep down, he knew one thing. He couldn't go back to being who he was. The next morning, Daniel woke up early. Not because he had a job to go to, but because he had a choice to make. He walked to the park again. Same path, same bench. But this time, the old man wasn't there. Daniel sat down anyway. He looked around, took a deep breath, and spoke softly to himself. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, "but I know I don't want to stop." That sentence, simple as it was, became his anchor. Not confidence, not certainty, just commitment. He went home, opened his notebook, and wrote one line. "I am not finished yet." He stared at those words for a long time. Then he added another. "I am just getting started." That was the moment everything began to shift again. Not because his situation changed, but because his mindset did. For the first time, Daniel wasn't waiting for life to tell him what to do. He was deciding for himself. And that is where real change begins. If you're listening to this right now, and you feel uncertain, afraid, or lost, understand this. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need one decision. A decision to keep going. A decision to try, even when it's uncomfortable. A decision to believe, even when it's difficult. Because rediscovering yourself isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the parts of you that you left behind. And Daniel was finally finding his way back. If this part of the story feels real to you, if you've ever faced a moment where everything felt uncertain, stay with me. Because the hardest part is not starting. It's continuing when things fall apart. And in the next part, everything will be tested. The days that followed were not easy. In fact, they were some of the hardest Daniel had faced in years. Losing his job didn't just affect his income, it shook something deeper, his identity. For decades, when people asked, "What do you do?" he had a clear answer. Now, he didn't. And that silence, that hesitation, made him uncomfortable. The routine he had followed for most of his life was gone. No fixed schedule, no daily structure, no sense of direction from the outside. At first, it felt like freedom, but very quickly, it started to feel like uncertainty. Daniel would wake up in the morning and sit at the edge of his bed, thinking, what should I do today? It sounds like a simple question, but when you've spent your entire life being told what to do, it becomes a very difficult one. Some mornings he felt motivated. He went for his walk, came home, and wrote in his notebook. But other mornings, he stayed in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, listening to that quiet voice again. What if this doesn't lead anywhere? What if you're just wasting time? What if you fail? And there's nothing left after that? Fear has a way of returning when things are uncertain, and Daniel was right in the middle of that uncertainty. One afternoon, he decided to do something he had been avoiding. He opened his old laptop. It was slow, outdated, but it still worked. He stared at the screen for a long time, unsure of what he was even looking for. Then slowly, he opened a blank document. He began typing, not a story this time, but something different. A collection of his thoughts shaped into something clearer, something structured. It felt uncomfortable, more serious, more real. Because now, it wasn't just about writing for himself. It felt like he was stepping into something unknown. After an hour, he stopped. He read what he had written. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And then came the hardest question. Should I share this? His heart beat faster. This was different from writing in a notebook. No one would see. This meant exposure, judgment, risk. Daniel leaned back in his chair. The room was silent. He thought about all the reasons not to do it. I'm too old. I don't understand technology. No one is interested in this. People will criticize me. Every excuse felt valid, safe, comfortable. But then, another thought appeared. Quiet, but powerful. What if someone needs to hear this? Daniel sat still. That question stayed with him. Not about success, not about recognition, but about impact. For a moment, he remembered himself, sitting alone at that table weeks ago, feeling lost. If he had read something honest back then, something real, something human, would it have helped him? The answer was simple, yes. And that changed everything. Daniel took a deep breath. His hands moved slowly across the keyboard. He created a simple online page. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated, just words. His words. When he finished, his finger hovered over the button, publish. He froze. This was it. The line between staying hidden and stepping forward. His mind screamed, "Don't do it." But his heart whispered, "Try." And after a long pause, he clicked. Nothing dramatic happened. No sound. No applause. No reaction. Just silence. Daniel stared at the screen. "It's done," he said softly. But inside, it felt like something big had just shifted. That evening, he couldn't stop thinking about it. What if someone reads it? What if no one reads it? What if people don't like it? The waiting was uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. Not because he had to, but because he was curious. He walked to his laptop, slowly opened it, and checked. One view. Just one. Daniel smiled slightly. "Someone saw it," he whispered. It wasn't a lot, but it was something. Over the next few days, the numbers stayed small. 2 views, 3 views, sometimes none. There were no comments, no messages, no feedback. And slowly, doubt started to creep back in. "See?" the voice returned. "No one cares." This was a mistake. Daniel felt the weight again. He considered stopping, deleting everything, going back to a quiet, safe routine. But then, something unexpected happened. One evening, as he opened his page again, he noticed something new. A message. His heart skipped a beat. He clicked it. It was short, very simple. "Thank you. I needed this today." That was it. No long explanation, no details. Just one sentence. But it hit Daniel harder than anything else. He read it again and again. Someone, somewhere, had read his words and felt something. He leaned back in his chair, eyes slightly wet. Not because of success, but because of connection. For the first time in a long time, he felt useful. He felt seen. And more importantly, he felt meaningful. That one message did something powerful. It silenced the doubt. Even if just for a moment, it reminded him why he started. Not to impress, not to prove anything, but to express and to connect. From that day on, Daniel's approach changed. He stopped focusing on numbers. He stopped worrying about being perfect. Instead, he focused on being real. Every day, he wrote something new, sometimes short, sometimes longer, but always honest. His story, his lessons, his thoughts about life after 50. Slowly, very slowly, more people started reading. Not thousands, not even hundreds at first, but a few became more. And those few mattered because each one was a real person. Someone feeling something, someone connecting. And with every message he received, Daniel's confidence grew. Not loud confidence, not arrogant confidence, but quiet, steady belief. The kind that builds from experience. The kind that says, keep going. One afternoon, Daniel sat in the park again. Same bench, same path. This time, the sun felt warmer. The air felt lighter. And for the first time, he wasn't looking for answers. He was simply present. He smiled to himself, thinking about how far he had come. Not in success, but in mindset. From feeling finished to feeling like he was just beginning. From silence to expression. From doubt to purpose. And in that quiet moment, he realized something important. Life didn't change because everything became perfect. Life changed because he did. Because he chose to take small steps. Because he chose to continue, even when it was uncomfortable. Because he chose to believe, even when it was difficult. And that made all the difference. If you're listening to this right now, understand this deeply. You don't need a big opportunity to change your life. You need a small step, taken consistently. You need courage, not certainty. Because certainty comes later, after you move, after you try, after you keep going. When it feels slow, when it feels invisible, when it feels uncertain. Daniel was still not at the end of his journey. In many ways, he was just getting started. But something inside him was now unshakable. A quiet truth. I still matter. And maybe that's what you need to hear too. Stay with me, because in the next part, everything comes together. The realization, the breakthrough, The moment that changes how Daniel sees his entire life. And it might just change yours too. Weeks turned into months, and something quiet but powerful continued to grow in Daniel's life. Not fame, not wealth, but something deeper, clarity. Every morning, he woke up with a sense of direction. Not a perfect plan, but a reason to begin the day. He walked with more energy. He wrote with more honesty. He lived with more awareness. The man who once sat in silence, questioning his entire life, was slowly becoming someone else. Or maybe he was finally becoming himself. His writing continued to reach people. Messages came in, slowly but consistently. Some were just a few words. Thank you. This helped me. I feel less alone. But others were longer. People shared their own stories, their fears, their regrets, their hopes. Men and women in their 50s, 60s, even 70s, all feeling the same quiet question. Is it too late for me? And every time Daniel read those messages, he saw a reflection of who he used to be. Lost, unsure, quietly searching. One evening, as he sat at his table, reading another message, something clicked. A realization so simple, yet so powerful, it stopped him for a moment. All this time, he thought he was trying to rebuild his life, but in truth, he was rediscovering it. Not creating something new, but reconnecting with something that had always been there. His voice, his thoughts, his ability to feel, to express, to grow. And suddenly, all those years he once thought were wasted, they didn't feel wasted anymore. They felt valuable because every experience, every struggle, every responsibility he carried had shaped him into someone who could now understand others deeply. Someone who could speak not from theory, but from truth. Daniel leaned back in his chair, eyes calm, mind clear. For the first time, he whispered to himself, I understand. Life was never about starting early. It was about starting honestly. And sometimes, honesty only comes with time. That was his breakthrough. Not a loud moment, not a dramatic change, but a deep, quiet shift in perspective. From regret to gratitude. From I missed my chance to I am right on time. The next day, Daniel did something he never imagined before. He recorded his voice, just a simple message. No fancy equipment, no perfect script, just him. Speaking, sharing his thoughts about life after 50, about fear, about purpose, about starting again. His voice was not perfect. It shook slightly at first, but it was real, and that made it powerful. He uploaded it, and just like before, there was no instant reaction. But this time, he didn't wait anxiously. He didn't doubt, because something inside him was already settled. He knew why he was doing it. Days passed. Then something unexpected happened. One of his recordings started reaching more people, more views, more messages, more shares. People weren't just reading his words anymore. They were listening to him, connecting with him, feeling him. Daniel sat quietly one evening, listening to his own voice play back from the screen. It felt strange, but also meaningful. Not because of the numbers, but because of the journey. From a man who once believed he had nothing left, to a man whose voice was now helping others find hope. That was his climax. Not success in the traditional sense, but impact. Real, human, emotional impact. And in that moment, Daniel smiled. Not a small smile, but a full, peaceful, deeply satisfied smile. Because he finally understood something most people never do. Your life does not lose meaning with age. It gains meaning if you choose to see it. He looked out the window that night, the same window where he once sat, feeling empty. But now, everything felt different. The world hadn't changed. Time hadn't gone backward. But he had changed, and that changed everything. So let me tell you this, clearly, honestly, directly. If you are over 50, or even close to it, you are not late. You are experienced. If you feel like you've lost direction, you haven't. You've just been busy surviving. And now, it's time to start living. If you think your best years are behind you, you're looking in the wrong direction. Because the best years of your life are not defined by age. They are defined by awareness, by courage, by the willingness to begin again. Daniel didn't become a different person. He became a more honest version of himself. And that is available to you right now. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Now. Start small. Write one sentence. Take one walk. Try one new thing. Speak one honest truth. That's how it begins. Not with a big moment, but with a small decision. A decision to say, my story is not over. Because it isn't. As long as you are breathing, there is more for you to feel, to learn, to give, to become. And maybe, just like Daniel, the person you are meant to be is still waiting for you. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think or feel something real, take a moment right now, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel because there are many more stories like this waiting for you. And remember, it's not too late. It's your time.